Hi, I'm Leonie. I just want to echo Maureen's point about working and listening to a range of opinions and learning a lot in a very short space of time. It was a massive privilege, actually, thanks to the group. We were working in the group Secular Values in Society, and first we needed a qualifier statement to determine what we think are the secular values that will empower women. So the statement is: the secular values that will empower women are science-based reason, equality and empathy in alliance with the principles of feminism. In non-democratic countries, so in countries where secular values are not recognised or protected by laws, such laws should be established and applied and address the issues that deny women full participation in society and government. In democratic societies, secular values will protect and advance already established freedoms, and cultural and religious beliefs must not be used to deny or limit these freedoms. And the influence of religion for Ireland and kind of the mishmash situation that we're in here in Ireland, where we're supposedly a republic, but not really. The influence of religious doctrines will be removed from the Constitution. Government should not delegate key public services to religious or cultural groups, and services provided by the state or taxpayer must observe secular values and be for the benefit of all citizens. Thank you.
We tried to give some recommendations in order to improve the separation of religion and state in democratic states. First, let's say, problem, if you could call it that way, is what is a democratic state? Because of course we have such thing as a separation between religion and state, but it's quite different from one democratic state to another. So that was our first issue we had to deal with. Finally, we agreed on these points. The Constitution has to make explicit mention of the separation of religion and state. The state shall be funding religions, those must be the fries. The state shall not be funding religions or beliefs. All services, social services, healthcare services or education, accorded to citizens, shall respect the law, not full stop, comma? Semicolon, yeah, right. And all state practices should be neutral. That for the democratic states. For the non-democratic states, there again, we had a discussion. What is a non-democratic state? So we try to think of what we heard this morning and yesterday about countries as Iran. And we stated that certain things are fundamental in order to create a first first attempt of the separation between religion and state in countries like Iran or Afghanistan or certain African countries perhaps. The access to education and information shall be free and unrestricted. That was the first condition. The second is the international community shall be vigilant on the application of human rights and take appropriate action when necessary. It sounds quite basic, but we could easily say that when education and information is not guaranteed and human rights are not respected, you don't have a single chance of implementing a separation between religion and state. And then for Ireland specifically, that was a bit more difficult for me because I don't know the Irish situation very well, apart from what I learned yesterday and today. In Ireland, we have to do we have to create one specific change, one specific action, and that is modify the constitution, because with the kind of constitution that Ireland has now, there's virtually nothing you can do. So our first recommendation for Ireland is the religious references shall be removed from the Irish constitution and legislation. Because if you don't do that, any action or any measures you would propose would simply not be, would not have a legal basis, and that's what you need. The second recommendation is very important in order to, let's say, get everyone informed and wake people up, is about education. And the recommendation is this one: the state shall provide education. And not as it is written now, the state shall provide for education. It's a huge difference, explained to me by some critical Irish citizens, saying that if the state has to provide for education, they can simply outsource education as they do now. If the state provides education, it should be state schools that respect the Constitution. Well, if it's not based on the Holy Trinity, then. And that should be one of the first steps that Ireland can take in order to improve the separation between state and religion. Thank you.
Our group had to look at human rights in general, I think. Easy topic, so we were the first to finish. I think we've already said the first thing we were talking about, any universal human right should be universal, so therefore there shouldn't necessarily be a difference between democratic and non-democratic states. So I think we've all read that already. But at the same time then we wanted to focus on a concise message for each of those, trying to get at the important bits that we as a group were saying that were useful for the democratic and non-democratic states. I think the first thing that we also agreed was that women's rights are human rights. There is no women's rights as such, it is human rights that we were talking about. But that should be assumed, but it's not assumed. It's said in practice, or it's said on paper, but it's not actually put in place in practice. And that led on to the message we wanted to get across for the democratic states. These are all short and spiffy, so I'm kind of feeling bad now that we're looking at human rights, but you had a big version. So for democratic states, we basically had one sentence: equal sexual, reproductive, and economic rights for women, highlighting the fact that while on paper there might be equal rights between men and women in the law, but in practice pay scales are different. Right to reproductive possibilities for women are obviously not the same in these democratic states either. So for non-democratic states, we wanted to highlight, we were talking around the fact that women were possibly seen as property, and we wanted to look at it a little differently. So the statement here is the right to autonomy, self-determination as an individual, and fully equal treatment at all levels of society for men and women. And we put men in there deliberately so that they couldn't say equal rights to what, and then get away with it for putting women equal to something else. And the last part of that statement is this takes precedent over religious or ideological dogma. So we were also thinking about not just religious states, but also the non-religious states, like possibly North Korea, which is a different tyranny associated with women there. And then for Ireland in particular, we wanted to focus on the thing that is specific to us in our society, and that's the right to freedom from religious interference in all aspects of the lives of women. And obviously that tailors into some of the other groups, but that seemed to be the main differentiation of rights that we were seeing for Ireland. We did have discussions over the word interference there, possibly influence and interference, but everybody should have the right to influence the democratic society. So there's still issues there. Maybe abuse of power could be a thing instead of interference, but at the moment interference felt like the right word. Okay, thanks very much.
Our group
got reproductive rights, and I'd just like to say thank you very much to our group because they stayed behind. We were the last, I'm sorry. So first of all, we also had the same issue as Anne had when it came to democratic and non-democratic, and what's the difference, because obviously some democratic states have actually rolled back a lot of their reproductive rights, but we tried to stick to the headings anyway and try to come up with something that best fits as possible. So the first one, the democratic states. The state should recognise and respect the right to universal and absolute bodily ownership. Reproductive healthcare services should be free, accessible, non-judgmental and objective. And comprehensive evidence-based sex education should be universally available. So we felt that this covered the three main headings under maybe the majority of democratic states, that you do have a right to bodily autonomy and self-determination, and you also need access to healthcare, and sex education needs to be comprehensive and non-religious. So then the second heading, non-democratic, we felt that this needed attention from outside the country, as well as assistance to grassroots organisations from within the country. So the way we framed this is human rights conventions should be honoured in their entirety, and directives should not be vetoed on religious grounds or otherwise. International assistance should be given to grassroots campaigns involved in the provision and promotion of comprehensive reproductive health services and education. So we felt that covered maybe some of the issues surrounding non-democratic countries. Then when it came to Ireland, we didn't deal with the legislation that's going through the Dáil at the moment because, to be honest, it's rubbish. So instead we said the decriminalisation of abortion and related services. The 8th Amendment should be removed from the Constitution. Protection of and access to free, safe and legal reproductive health services free from religious interference. So we felt that we wanted to be a bit more specific with Ireland because of what's going on at the moment, and if there was decriminalisation, removal of the 8th Amendment, and then protection and access to reproductive health services, this will hopefully cover most of our issues surrounding reproductive care at the moment. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Maureen, and I was with the group dealing with politics and campaigning, and we did it in a slightly different way, or might I say that I cheated a little, but we're actually having a different person to present each point. So on democratic states, Joni Spring is going to present that. On non-democratic situations, Carlos Diaz, and Ireland is going to be Rebecca O'Neill. So I'm just going to ask Joni first of all to talk about, this is our point for how this conference can contribute in something in terms of democratic states.
Okay, for the first point, within a democratic state, within a fair and democratic society, it is essential to define the concept of morality as not being exclusive to religion, and to clearly promote secular feminist values as being beneficial to all citizens. Furthermore, it is essential for the values to be communicated to the citizens in a concise, accessible manner, using whatever means are available, and for information to be disseminated in order to promote the growth of a wider secular community in the future.
And Carlos is going to present the second point, which is about non-democratic countries. I just have to say, when Carlos is coming out, that it was such a privilege to be, just to listen to so many different people. And my group had lots of a few different countries, and very diverse age range as well, ranging from 15-year-old Sarah, who's here, right up, and go any further than that.
Okay, so we made it more of an action point than a declarative point, but we have a suggested wording for it to be declarative if need be. What we wrote is, we made 2 points as we had discussed. We will amplify the voices of secular feminists fighting back against oppressive regimes throughout the world. And we will promote strategies and tools to overcome technological barriers used in undemocratic countries.
Okay, Rebecca.
Mine is nice and short and sweet. So this is in Ireland, and taking from what we've discussed in the further points, we would to start with fostering a safe environment and an inclusive community in which all Irish women can identify with the secular aim of the separation of religion and state. So it's really taking forward this idea of how women are quite good at creating communities in which people can feel very at home, very safe, very included, regardless of their own ideas of spirituality or religion, and that we can all be kind of under the umbrella of secularism, and to make that very much a grassroots community feel to it.
We're just coming near the end, and I want to thank the audience, and I want to thank you for participating in that last session. Could I ask Carlos from Atheist Ireland International just to say a couple of lines?
You're probably going to kick us out of the room soon, so I'll be very brief. AEI, Atheist Alliance International, is always very proud to be invited and participate in any event related to secularism, atheism, and, like here, secularism and women's issues. I would like to personally thank Atheist Ireland, Michael, Jane, and the whole organizing team of this exhilarating convention. I believe we had great panelists, great discussions, and a great declaration ahead of us. Thank you, everyone, for having me here.
Thanks very much. Michael Nugent, please, from Atheist Ireland.
Thanks very much. Atheist Ireland is really pleased to have put this event together. One of our aims, as well as promoting atheism and reason over superstition and supernaturalism, is to promote an ethical and secular state. And the ethical part is as important as the secular part of the state. And we promote values such as compassion and empathy and reciprocity and anger at injustice, but compassion with people. And I think that's a distinction that enables us to move forward, or recognising that we should be angry at things that are unjust, but that the method to correct those injustices has to move beyond mere anger. I would like to end by thanking all of the panellists, all the people that have come from so far abroad, both to speak and to participate in the conference from the floor. I'd like to thank the committee that organised this conference, a huge amount of work that went into it. And I'd particularly like to thank Jane. I mean, working with Jane is an absolute pleasure. She's Education Policy Officer of Atheist Ireland, and in practice I consider her to be co-chairperson of the organisation, because she does at least as much work and as important work in terms of maintaining what Atheist Ireland does and move us forward. We're coming to a situation in a few months' time where we'll be 5 years old, and as part of our sort of reviewing where we are in 5 years as an organisation, we're going to be looking at our structures, looking at our aims, looking at how we will be moving into the next 5 and 10 years of our existence. And so that'll be the next major thing we'll be doing, probably towards the end of this year, and you're more than welcome to take part in that whenever it happens. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you all again. I want to thank all my panellists and all the speakers. They were absolutely inspiring. I'm inspired after this. And Sarah, well done. You got up there I was very anxious about this conference. As you can imagine, it's very difficult to run a conference. And I knew I was going to be terribly stressed, and I expected all that. I did have a bit of stress, but I never thought I'd have so much fun You're the funniest bunch. You've made me laugh all over the last weekend, and I have had a really great time, and I have such good nuggets, but I'm not going to tell you. You're great fun. I enjoyed myself, and I said I'd never do it again, but I'm spoofing, I would. Thank you.